In a world now following the reveal of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition that was announced in last week's Nintendo Direct, a topic came to mind. The Wii sold a ton of copies, but a hearty majority of the clientele were having experiences such as this. That's not to say that there weren't any core gamers. There definitely were. They just weren't very well catered to, and by the end, a lot of them had dropped off, except for the purely Nintendo fans. And this is what Xenoblade Chronicles had me thinking of. This game is getting a second life in a whole new engine on a platform that's successful and sells well to fans of all sorts of genres, unlike the lopsided market of the Wii. So what other Wii games would deserve a second chance that may have been overlooked at the time? The real question is, what games need a Wii Master? Let's talk about it. Obviously, the Wii had a ton of games that actually did sell really well. These would be your Mario Galaxies, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Mario Kart Wii, Mario Party 8, and so on. And yes, I would love to see these ported over for me to get to personally enjoy again, but that's not what we're talking about. We actually have a video on our channel that goes over some popular Wii games that would be fun to have remasters of. But today we're going to talk about great games that suffered because of their platform, but could find new life and a new audience on the Switch. Okay, actually, let's talk about why exactly is this a good idea in the first place by talking for a second about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. The Wii is in a weird spot where it's not all that old, but also feels like forever ago all at the same time. If we keep going at our current pace with classic games on Nintendo consoles, then if N64 was the latest console to come to the Wii Virtual Console, DS was the latest to come to the Wii U, then probably GameCube will eventually come to the Switch, and theoretically Wii would show up on the next console. Of course, this is extrapolating on patterns, so it's not a science or anything, but the big idea is, it'll be seemingly forever before any of the Wii's library, it's just gonna organically have a chance to resurface in a meaningful way on a current platform. And not only that, but the Wii was also in a tough spot in terms of power, in that it was only a little more powerful than the GameCube, but attempted some games on similar scale to its peers, the PS3 and Xbox 360, but getting away with it to some degree because of its poor resolution. And then finally, some games that came out as the premise of this video just didn't have an attentive audience at the time. And all three of these issues are being fixed when we look at Xenoblade Chronicles. The first being that because the game's not going to release on a virtual console, it's just being re-released. It also looks a lot better than the original, and because it's so far out, it still has even more time for visual improvements before launch. And finally, and possibly most importantly, it actually has an attentive audience on the platform that it's launching on. Its sequel already launched on the Switch, which is a bit backwards, so whatever. And also RPGs just have been selling pretty well on the platform in general. It even has the extra benefit of content that wasn't able to make it to the original, now able to show up on this remaster. And furthermore, it looks like it's extremely faithful to the vision of the original, but at the same time looks a lot better, which is generally the mark of a good remake or remaster. Okay, so we've talked a bunch about the idea at hand, but let's get to the meat of the topic. Here are some games that, whether for better timing, redone graphics, or a new audience, could really do with a Wii Master on the Switch. First up, let's get an obvious one out of the way. As No More Heroes 3 was announced for calendar year 2020, there's an obvious need for No More Heroes 1 and 2 on the Switch. These titles launched on the Wii in 2007 and 2010 respectively, with an enhanced port of the first released in 2010 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. In these action-adventure games, you play as Travis Touchdown and are using your beam katana to kill assassins from the United Assassins Association. You do odd jobs and explore the world on foot or on your scooter. The games all have a more adult sense of humor as you save by sitting on a toilet, perform some lewd hand gestures to charge your sword, and so on, all on par for the director Suda51. One of the reasons the games weren't very widely adopted on the Wii, though, is likely that although they had the perfect structure for Nintendo fans, they were M-rated games on a console of mainly casuals. Now, however, Diablo and Mortal Kombat 11 are some of the best-selling third-party games on the Switch, both of which have M ratings. The audience is here, and all these games need is a little coat of paint. They'll look dated for sure, but acceptably so in this case. Sometimes, though, more mature themes can come in friendly-looking packages. Little King's Story was a Wii game that launched in 2009, then on the Vita in 2010, and is now on Steam as of several years ago, but apparently with a very poorly done port. I say the game touches on mature themes, and these are of alcohol, death, and sexuality. And still, it's a T-rated game despite the colorful art style, which may have caused some cognitive dissonance with the Wii audience, but is now not unheard of. Otherwise, though, it's a very well-liked mix of strategy game, life sim, and RPG, all things that are doing very well on the Switch. The various publishers for this game were also all ones that are still very active on the Switch today. Marvelous Entertainment published in Japan, and they have Daemon X Machina coming out now. Xseed, who published Rune Factory, Fate Extella, Senran Kagura, and a bunch more, published in the US, and Rising Star published in Europe and Australia. And not only do they have Deadly Premonitions 2 coming out soon, but they're also now part of Thunderful, which is the publisher for all Image and Form games like the SteamWorld series. This game, however, could easily fly under the radar again as well today, so it would really need the extra help of Nintendo giving it a push, maybe through a direct or at least some trailers, and also needs to have a well-made port. As far as RPGs go, you've certainly heard of Final Fantasy, and there's a chance you may have heard also of The Last Story. It's an action RPG from Hironobu Sakaguchi, who was a key figure in Final Fantasy after his departure from Square Enix. This title was put out with the studio Mistwalker, also responsible for the game The Lost Odyssey, among other titles. As a third-person action RPG with the original game, you could use your motion controls or classic controls, which transitions very well to the flexibility found in the Switch, as we see in games such as Okami HD. The game launched in 2012 and was reported to be publisher Xseed's most successful title at the time. However, the late release date surely must have hurt its performance, as the Wii U's launch was less than a year away. There were rumors towards the end of 2018 actually of a Last Story 2 based on a retail listing, but so far nothing has come of this. The developers seem to have mostly moved to mobile games, but at least a good port of a well-received game would excite many. Interestingly enough, this title was another in Operation Rainfall alongside Xenoblade Chronicles. This was a fan-based movement to get some Japanese games, notably those two, to be released in North America. So it would be very interesting if two of those three petitioned games received remasters now on a console that would welcome it with open arms. Switching it up a little bit, in 2008, the Wii saw the release of Wario Land Shake It. Now, although this game sold better than some of these other titles at just over 1 million copies sold, that's not quite as impressive considering it's a colorful 2D platformer with a moderately prominent Nintendo IP and on a 100 million selling console with an audience of primarily casual gamers. So it's certainly not to say that selling 1 million copies is a slouch, but the game could certainly receive some new life. Visually, there would be very little that needs to be done here. If there were such a button as export at higher resolution, this would be a perfect candidate for it. The art style is beautiful and fresh, especially compared to its exact equal of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which looked excitingly clean at the time, but does a much worse job of standing the test of time. The tricky bit with this game would simply be its control scheme. It could certainly come over with the same exact control scheme and you could just use your Joy-Con with motion controls, but that wouldn't translate well to any other form factor of play. Waggle controls aren't the best, but they could also be hard to faithfully replace. That said, however, I think we'd all be fine with just mapping buttons for different moves and calling it a day. As with other games, it would be great to have the option, but not worthwhile to bring it over with motion controls alone. There's 3 more third-party games I'd like to fit in here, but I don't have time to go in as much detail on all of them. Madworld, Red Steel 1 and 2, and Sin and Punishment Star Successor. Madworld is a gritty black and white comic book style hack and slash beat 'em up. It's got a lot of the same character as No More Heroes and shares its M rating as well. The game was published by Sega and developed by Platinum Games, so you know there's a strong focus on the combat mechanics. Red Steel 1 and 2 were exclusive Wii titles developed by Ubisoft. Once again, a while ago there were rumors of a sequel in the franchise, but nothing materialized. These are first-person shooters and hack and slash, and although the first game, a Wii launch title, wasn't particularly well received, the second followed it up with much better better reception. Due to being a launch title, the first game did just barely hit 1 million, but fewer came back around for the improved sequel. And then Sin and Punishment Star Successor is a game in a franchise that hasn't had much luck. The first game in the series released late in the N64 lifetime and only in Japan. It's a fairly rare game and well liked. Then its sequel came up on the Wii about halfway through its life, but possibly due to little press or something else, it went by comparatively unnoticed. That said though, although it's an on-rails shooter with motion controls, there are also the options to play with a classic controller, so it would transfer to the Switch very easily. This is one, however, that would really need a visual touch-up, as some of the models need a little something extra. Okay, and there's one more that really shouldn't make the cut in terms of raw numbers, but this is my video, and I have my reasons, so let's do it. Skyward Sword. The game reportedly sold 3.5 million, which is almost as much as the rest of these games combined, but yet this one needs a second chance. A lot of folks had either moved on from the Wii this late into its life cycle, didn't have the Wii Motion Plus, or just didn't like the implemented motion controls. Obviously, many fans loved the title, but I think there would be a much stronger fan base if some of its circumstances were a little different. So that said, now that there is an HD Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, though we have yet to see them on the Switch, it's about time the Skyward Sword got this same love. It would need even less polish to bring it up in terms of visuals than Twilight Princess, although it would need a lot more mechanical changes when it comes to motion controls. Those can't be mandatory. Sorry not sorry. The game was teased a while back also by Eiji Aonuma, but maybe that was just him having fun, I don't know. In any case, it would be well worth a remaster of this game. And there's a ton more, but you know what, I don't have time for all of them. Like Metroid Prime Trilogy, for example. We know the HD version is in the works for some time, in like 2043 or something like that. We don't know when it's actually going to come out. Interestingly enough, Metroid Prime 3 only barely sold 1 million, and the Trilogy didn't even sell that. So there's a huge potential audience out there that hasn't gotten to play them, and hopefully it's just gonna come to Switch sooner rather than later. But that's what I think. What do you think? What's your favorite Wii game, and which of these or others would you like to see come to the Switch for one reason or another? Let me know all that and more down in the comment section below. And while you're down there, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to fanatixfour for more content like this every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And we're gonna take some of those comments and talk about them on our podcast directly to you. That's at youtube.com/directly to you. There's links and stuff in the description. But that's about it for me for today. Have a great one. See you next time.